Good evening. My name is Renee Freeman Butler. I am a HEAL delegate and a higher education officer at LaGuardia Community College. And I have more than 25 years of experience in student affairs. And I'm co-hosting with my co-host. You're muted, Makiba.
Sorry. Hello, my name is Makiba Penda. I am the interim director at Medgar College for the Counseling and Psychological Services. I've been working at CUNY for about 13 years, and I've been a licensed mental health professional for over 20 years now.
So we are going to be addressing demand number 10, which speaks to student health emergencies and wellness. And so when you think about student health emergencies and when you think about wellness, we are thinking about it from the context of holistic and a student development perspective. It allows us to view our students from the prism of meeting them where they are. And what that means is that we recognize that our students all come in with a diversity of needs, challenges, and strengths. And so when we think about it from that perspective, really understanding how we engage our students, understanding how we connect them to the appropriate resources and support services on our campus is critical to their personal development, to their academic development, as well as to the college's overall goal of retaining and helping our students transition through the completion of their degrees. So, you think about this year, 2020, which has given us some real unprecedented complexities and challenges. And so we find ourselves faced with a perfect storm. So a perfect storm of epidemiology, equity, and economics. And it really, when you think about that, it really makes the vulnerable even more vulnerable. It really makes us think about what is happening in terms of our world, in terms of our students, and how it highlights the financial, healthcare, as well as looking at the food and housing insecurities that our students are faced with, giving rise to anxiety, panic attacks, and fear. And when you think about all of those things together, it really helps to shine a light on the importance and the need for the provision and availability of emotional and mental health support on our campuses. And so Makiba is going to really talk to you more about what that looks like and how that really interfaces on our campuses with our students and what our needs are and what support is necessary for us to get there. So Makiba?
So yes, so when you think about that perfect storm, like we went from being in person with our classes to now being remote. And then remote, you have to think about, did our students have the necessary support systems in order for them to still be successful? Did they have the equipment, the Wi-Fi? But also, what did they have? Did they have the emotional support? They're now living in homes that may have been, overcrowded or just, multi-generational. So did they have the space to really be able to be successful? And also what happened is that if you think about it in terms of mental health, mentally, it's like, can we provide them with more support services? And a lot of our campuses and a lot of our centers are not properly staffed to have handled not only what we were seeing in person, but now what was happening remote. The numbers today is that it's supposed to be one counselor to 1,000 students, which is to me still very high. And a lot of our campuses are even higher than that. It's like 1 to 3,000 because we're not appropriately staffed to change and to try to heal some of the inequities that we find that's happening with a lot of our students. And then with mental health is that, was it, the support services that's so needed so that you can get to your final destination, to that graduation site, is sometimes not appropriate. We don't have the appropriate staff. We may not have the psychiatric nurse practitioner. We may not have the psychologist. We may not have all of the licensed staff members that we needed. So with that, it just added on to almost like a bigger storm. So now we not only have this large pandemic and we're home, but do we have the appropriate staff to help the student to really get them through their panic attacks, or get them through those moments that they was anxious, because now they have to learn a blackboard as well as get their assignments done? Or did you even have the proper support in order just to go from being in person to now remote, and the loss of the connection, the loss of the feeling of isolation, the feeling that may also you have just depression, because not only were you going through this, but the world is going through this, and your own feeling of, can I protect my family? Can I protect myself? And with all of that, it just was not, I don't think it was enough mental health services for a lot of our students. And I think that with this number, this item 10 that we have on, that the PSC is pushing, is that you need more mental health. You need more wellness services so that our students can really thrive in this now second semester of a pandemic, and where you're now still mostly remote, and your classes are now still through a box called your computer and not in person, where you can really, have that kind of true connection to your faculty member, to your professor, and to each other. So it really is for CUNY to understand that mental health is very important, because without it, you then see the other support services you're not going to need. Sometimes it leads to depression, but it also leads to evictions. It can lead to food insecurity. Like, the supports it's just really more needed now more than ever. And I hope that we can push CUNY to understand that these numbers, even the 1 to 1,000, is not enough. But if you can even start with some equity within all of the CUNY campuses, college centers, so that everyone, if you pick the 1 to 1,000, that means that, places like a Mega Evers College where I work at would at least then have 6 counselors, and not 2 counselors and then the rest interns. Because interns are beautiful. And I believe firmly as a social worker that I want to, supervise and to train the next generation of future social workers. But I can't do that and also be administrator, manager, and counselor, having my own caseload too. We need to give our trainees and our interns the best of ourselves. They don't just need 1/3. They sometimes need the whole 3/3 in order to be a really great trainee and future clinician. So we cannot treat them like staff. They need to be still treated as what they are, which is still training and still interns. So they cannot be staff. So we need full-time licensed staff. And so when they say that 1 to 1,000, it's supposed to be 1 full-time licensed professional to 1,000 students. And I think that would at least start with us being equitable among all of the CUNY campuses. And then we can go further, because I believe that number is too high, but we can start there. That'd be a great start in giving our students at least the beginnings of what they deserve, what their student fees pay for, which is a licensed mental health professional in each of our campuses. So they don't have to go out into the communities, because it's really hard for anybody to walk into a mental health center or a counseling center in their college. And if they made that first step, I think we should at least be able to meet them with our steps to making sure that they get to where they want to go, which is for all of them is across that stage, their graduation stage at the end of their 2 or 4 years. So I think we have that obligation to meet them with a licensed professional, a licensed mental health professional, not a trainee, which is excellent. And truly part-timers are good too, but we see now that part-timers can be unfortunately terminated. And if they're terminated, then that means that they are not going to be as consistent in our students' lives. And I think they also deserve consistency. That's what they pay for. And I think that's just the minimum of what they deserve. So
I'd just like to add, in support of CUNY's mission, and really looking at it from the perspective of developing the whole person. Those services are critical, and the coordination of those services are critical, and actually having services that have licensed professionals available to really provide that kind of support to students, to really get them to engage, to help our students understand that there is a point of contact for them, that they can feel comfortable and that is confidential, and that that support is provided. And I do think that based on my experience, even working with students and the need for that engagement, it is very critical for them to be able to have someone to talk to, particularly when you look at students that come to us from a diversity of cultures, from a diversity of backgrounds, and are not always comfortable having those conversations with people. So developing that relationship within a wellness center, within a mental health center on our campus allows them to have that connection, allows them to have someone that they could talk to when they are having challenges. Well, you know, I have experience with students that live in households that have maybe 15 to 20 people in them. Maybe they have 2 bedrooms. And so it's incredibly difficult, and particularly at this time where, you know, you are supposed to social distance and someone gets sick. And how does that happen? That you're able to social distance in a household that's really full. So what do you do about that when you are focused on kind of completing your studies and wanting to move on, even though it's online? If people are sick around you or you're sick, how do you have that conversation? How do you know what resources are out there to really provide that support? And I think, you know, wellness is an important key to this. You know, to me, it means really keeping people well. So you're kind of preventing them from kind of moving on into some other space. And so I support what Makiba is saying about really making sure you have professionals there that are sufficient enough to support the student populations that are on our campus, that we're really looking at it from a student development framework and a holistic framework, and that we're developing the whole person from a personal perspective to an academic perspective to a mental health and emotional perspective as well. Do you want to add anything else, Makiba?
Well, there was a question, and I just like to answer it. Like right now, the services that most of the counseling centers are providing are definitely remote, and they are still providing individual counseling to students. We're doing a lot of group work with students, and still most of us are doing our events. And then some of us are having Zoom rooms, so just in case, like dedicated Zoom rooms, just in case there is a crisis that comes up, and you may not have a therapist or someone that you're seeing, that you can always drop in and just like get some therapy. So most of the counselors and counseling centers are doing that. I think that PSC CUNY can mainly help the mental health counseling directors and the counseling centers just by pushing the need for more licensed mental health counselors, and really pushing the colleges to understand the importance of mental health and the importance of really dedicating monies so that there are lines in the budget for more licensed mental health counselors, or for like mental health nurse practitioners, psychiatric nurse practitioners, or psychologists, so that there will be more clinicians there for students as they come into school. Because sometimes it's not only just, it's not just the big things that we think about when we think about mental health or the big diagnosis, but it's just the fact of even just being there for students as they transition into college. They're transitioning from an adolescent to an adult, and that transition is just as hard. So even just the basic things of college prep, those college prep of like how not to procrastinate, motivation, time management, stress management, those type of things, even a counselor and the counseling services can provide students. And those things are necessary and needed, but sometimes when you don't have enough staff, you have to prioritize, and you prioritize the people that have the bigger challenges. And sometimes our other students are left behind or are asked to go other places. And that's the unfortunate part about not having appropriate, sufficient staff, licensed staff.
Mm-hmm. And the building of the relationships with the person.
Yes.
That's very important because that trust is important in that kind of dynamic, and building that relationship is critical. And when you have so many students, it makes it very difficult to kind of, build relationships on that level and kind of create that caseload that would be manageable, where that person knows that they can come back to you and ask a question. Because I think you make some very good points around the academic aspect of what students might need, even with test taking, right?
Yes.
Students, really freak out about that. And so how do they cope? How do they cope not only with life, but how do they cope with managing so many of the responsibilities that they might have in school and outside of school, work, children, home life, or homelessness. So there are so many things, I think, that when we look at why our students don't return, that we can look right at the fact that we don't have the kind of support necessary to help them build the capacity to cope with things or strategize around it, or just sometimes.
Yes, and understand we are still dedicated to our students, and there are still a lot of counselors out there in the counseling centers that are there to really help our students get to that next level, to get through this whole pandemic and the protests and just the whole racial injustices that we are experiencing now. But you always can do the next step better, and I think CUNY definitely can do the next step better in providing that kind of equity among all the counseling centers throughout CUNY. And then I think also that if the PSC can really just always promote mental health counseling and really push our schools to really think about how can they put more money to our mental health counseling and our wellness programs, all of the wellness programs. If it's a wellness program you have in your college, then all of the wellness programs, the health, the mental health, the differently able, but in Mega, we have them separate. So I'm really going to push them to really put some monies and some real dedication to our mental health counseling program.
Yeah, and I just think, looking at it from that holistic student development perspective really kind of keeps us on track with what it is that we're trying to do in terms of developing our students. So looking at them from a personal, emotional, mental, as well as academic perspective to help them navigate the course of the campuses and to get to their degree completion goal.
Yes, definitely. So thank you. I thank you for listening. Thank you for being online with us. Thank you for the question. And I mean, we got to continue to push and strive just for our students and for their wellness. Their wellness is very important so they can get across that stage in 2 to 4 years. Because without it, we know that we will be losing a generation of people, and that's not what we're here to do. So I thank you for allowing me to speak about mental health.
And thank you.